Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Chairman of Monmouthshire County Council.
Please be seated. Before we start the meeting proper this afternoon, Paul is going to read out a short statement. There will be no response to it.
That sounds very formal, doesn't it? Good afternoon, councillors. Hopefully you have all had the chance to have read the email that I circulated earlier this week around the circumstances concerning Joy Robson. Several of you, in fact many of you, have responded. I just felt it might be helpful to let you know that the chairman will be writing to Joy on behalf of all of us, giving her our best wishes and our support. That's all I wanted to share with you. You know, it's a tricky time, so our actions or inactions will always be guided by Joy's wishes rather than our own. Okay, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Councillor Strong.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Apologies from Lisa Dimmock, Sarah Jones and Paul Pavia.
Councillor Joe.
Apologies from Jez Becker.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Petruni.
Councillors Kevin Williams and Councillor Tony Eason.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations? Sorry, Simon.
I do need to say a few words. It's lovely to see Paul back here.
What was the name of the officer introducing the three youngsters?
Jade.
No second name.
Got a clue.
Thank you, Simon, very much. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Okay. There is on our agenda now an additional item. I've allowed it. There was a bit of a confusion in the background, but under the circumstances, I only thought it was right that we should allow these three young people to address us. So could you, Jade, introduce them?
Yes, no problem.
Two people.
Got it? Yeah. Hi, I'm Charlie Oliver Holland. I am the acting chair at the moment of Monmouthshire's Youth Council, and I'm also a member of Youth Parliament for Newport East. So we're just here to tell you a little bit about, as a youth council, what we've been up to, etc. So the British Youth Council send out a ballot paper called Make Your Mark. It has 10 priority issues that may affect young people all across the UK. The 10 issues in 2018 were mental health, end period poverty, votes at 16, put an end to knife crime, curriculum for life, support for youth services, equal pay for equal work, let's tackle homelessness, transport, and to welcome refugees. So as a youth council, we decided that we'd take these ballot papers and go around Monmouthshire to all the schools and try and get as much response from young people as possible to see what young people thought was a priority issue for them. So in Monmouthshire, which is our record so far for the Youth Council, we had 2,788 young people in Monmouthshire take part in this ballot. and we collected the results, and the top 3 results came back to be mental health, homelessness and knife crime. The top results, there was 511 votes for mental health to be a priority issue. For homelessness, we had 429 votes, and for put an end to knife crime, 402 young people in Monmouthshire voted for that. So to try and tackle this for young people so that they knew that we were doing something about what they said, we decided to plan a youth conference back in December. There are a few people here who attended. Martin Graucut, Penny Jones, Tudor Thomas and Joanne Watkins attended the event. We basically were asking young people what they wanted us to do about the issues that they raised. So.
The youth conference had a wide variety of students from the schools and from all different age groups. I think we had a year 7 all the way up to 6th form, and it was very informal, very casual, relaxed atmosphere, and we introduced the topics, and we had a bit of a networking and a debate to just open up their minds, and then we moved on to a carousel of the topics. So we split the youths up into 3 different groups, and then they went around to different tables to discuss the issues so we could get a more targeted view and listen a bit more closely. And we asked 3 main questions. Why were the issues voted as the top 3? What are the current services that you're aware of in Monmouthshire for these services, and what we could do to improve?
So the 3rd issue, as I said, was knife crime. So we asked people, first of all, why they voted for knife crime. A lot of people did express the view that knife crime isn't a big issue in Monmouthshire, but young people are fearful that it will be due to social media spreading information about events happening in the cities of knife crime incidents. So young people said that they would like us as a youth council to try and educate people on how there are only low statistics of knife crime, but educate people that it is a big danger to carry a knife and that they shouldn't do it. Many young people said that music and social media influence people to think that knife crime was okay when it's really not, and that they need approachable teachers and youth workers so that if they did come across a knife-related issue or gang violence, there was somewhere to turn to before it became life-threatening. So, as I said, the 2nd most voted issue was homelessness. Many people expressed the view that in Monmouthshire, not a lot of people are physically sleeping on the streets, but there's a lot. Everyone in Monmouthshire, every young person said that at least one person in Monmouthshire who's sleeping rough. This may be on the streets, but not physically. Maybe sofa surfing or not having a permanent residence. So the young people said that the services provided in schools for people sleeping rough are that there is support if people get in those situations, but there is a stereotype behind people who are sleeping rough, and that it needs to be more openly talked about, and so that young people who do get in rough situations have somewhere to go to without feeling judged. Young people expressed the view that both homelessness and knife crime as issues were very highly linked to mental health, that if there was a mental health problem, then sometimes knife crime happens or people end up sleeping rough. So as a youth council, we've decided to make our priority issue, as the young people voted, mental health, so that both of the issues of knife crime and homelessness can also come into our work that we're doing on mental health. So.
The reason why I think, in all honesty, that mental health was voted the priority issue is the fact that it's been more openly discussed about in the media nowadays, and the fact that it's more openly discussed and you're allowed to feel these feelings without having to feel like you're not normal, in a way, to put it more casually. The issues, well, 3 main points were raised across all 3 groups that I chaired, so I chaired the group, and one was the fact that the mental health support is available in schools, but it needs to be more accessible, because some students might trust a teacher, but they might be too overwhelmed with work so that they can deal with them, so they decide that it's better to just bottle up their issues instead. Another issue that was raised is the fact that they want it more talked about in primary schools, because when they suddenly come up to secondary school and they're dealing with all these stress and pressure because of GCSE exams, they don't know how to handle it, and so eventually it just snowballs into a bigger problem. So we want to more focus on the fact that you can talk about your feelings more in primary school and the earlier stages of mental health rather than just the end result. I don't know. I think that's about.
So a lot of young people said that there are services for all issues that they have, but some of them need to be improved or more accessible, and in schools there needs to be a higher number of services because they're overcrowded and there's really long waiting lists. So that's about all from us, but thank you.
Well, thank you both very much indeed. That was an inspiring speech from both of you. If I can call on our Cabinet Member for Education, Councillor John, he will give you a little vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Well, firstly, can I thank you, Charlie and Taylor, for coming in today. I appreciate it can be very daunting addressing this room full of people sometimes, but you've spoken really articulately about the work you've been doing. And it's a great interest. You know, we provide services for people of all ages in this county, but you guys, more than people of almost any other age, have got a greater buy-in into the future of this county. So, and let me reassure you that just because incidents of homelessness or knife crime may be low in Monmouthshire, if young people in this county feel it's a concern, it's a concern. So, you know, our job is to represent the views of people of all ages, and if those issues are of concern to the people you represent and we represent, then we need to take that seriously and we need to hear that. Can I also congratulate you, Charlie, on your election to the Welsh Youth Parliament for Newport East. It's fantastic to see younger people taking an interest in getting involved in our democracy. So that's brilliant to see. Thank you. On the issues you've raised, we've got officers and agencies working across those issues, and we will do what we can to make sure that those are taken forward. But thank you for the work that you're doing. You're a credit to the Youth Council and a credit to Monmouthshire. Jade, thank you as well for the work that you do, and I hope that as a council we can continue to listen to the views that young people express, and we can continue to work really positively with the Youth Council, and that we can do a better job as councillors because of the input that you give to us. So thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you both. Now, you're perfectly willing to sit here for the next 4 hours and listen to us, or you can take your leave of us and get back to wherever you came from. Oh, well. Right. We now go on to notices of motion, and this is an afternoon of unusual items. It's yet another. I was asked at the beginning of the week if I would accept an additional motion this afternoon. You have all been circulated with a copy of it, I believe, on hard copy, and if I can call on Councillor Batruni to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for accepting the emergency motion.
Can I first of all ask you, is it second?
It's about a critical project, and we're only, I became aware of this late last week when it was raised at a social justice meeting, where I think I can say that cross-party there was concern raised about the future of Community Connections, which I think we all agree does tremendous work for residents across this county, particularly basically making sure as much as humanly possible that people aren't isolated or feel lonely in their communities. So basically volunteers befriend vulnerable adults, often staying with them to the end of their lives, and giving them that sense of social support that many people sadly lack. And it's a great scheme, and I was informed, and many councillors were informed, that the future financially maybe wasn't as secure post going into the new financial year. So I thought it was important that we had a motion so all councillors were aware of that, aware of this great scheme, and that we will work all together with all partners and maybe coming on our own resources to make sure this vital service, which is a preventative service and fulfills many of our priorities around loneliness and isolation, does not close come end of March.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would have been very happy to second this also, and thanks to Dimitri for bringing it. I know it flowed from the Sarah Jones Social Justice Group last week, and it was news to me at that time as well. And you captured it very well, Dimitri. I mean, what a wonderful service this is. This is a service that is supported by multi-agencies and do some fantastic work, befriending work, and you know, to tackle those those isolation issues in all regards. We absolutely support this motion. I sit on the PSB as the Chief Exec, as Chair. I think it's actually right and proper, recognising that all of the bodies who sit on the Public Service Board, or most of them anyway, are already involved with this service, and you know, we should perhaps take their dilemma, and that's what the motion is asking, take this dilemma back to the Public Service Board with a strong recommendation that we, as a public board, find a way forward to help this worthy cause to continue, and to find a sustainable way forward in the longer term. So very happy to support this motion, Mr. Chairman, and look forward to putting it on the Public Service Board agenda in due time.
Thank you. Councillor Blakeborough.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Petroni, for bringing this forward. I was also at the same meeting, and we were really shocked that there was this gap of funding that could mean a folding of not just an amazing service, but an innovative service that actually should set the model for other authorities to look at. And particularly with Monmouthshire, I think one of our priorities is to tackle isolation and loneliness. And this is a great project to show that, because it is about transport as well, which is a huge area of concern for us, and support and befriending. And as I say, it's creative, it's innovative, I can say that word. And not only do we need to save this, but we need to put more money in to develop it further. Now, in terms of costings, I mean, I know it's the health authorities has already put money into it. I think it was 45,000 she was saying she needs just to fill the gap until other funding comes. I'm aware that we at the moment as an authority don't put any money into that budget. So 45,000, guys, for, you know, to save that is not a lot. It's a drop in the ocean. So I absolutely support this. I would like to see that we're just very quickly going to put that 45k in, and then go forward to develop further funding to develop this model further. Thanks.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Penny-Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reply to Dimitri's motion, and also to reply to Debbie. Social Care and Health does recognise the great work that Bridges deliver to people in Monmouthshire, and we've been actively involved for many years in developing services to support people of all ages in partnership in Bridges and other voluntary sector providers. They've always played a very important role in supporting people alongside statutory provision. And since the implementation of the Social Service and Wellbeing Act, the importance of community and voluntary services cannot be emphasised enough, and it has taken on a great importance. The key challenge for all voluntary sector organisations is the constant search for funding streams, which typically span 2 to 3 years. In effect, by the time the project is up and running and delivering outcomes, the search for future funding has to begin again. The current Community Connection Scheme, which comprises community befriending, telephone befriending and the community car scheme, is looking to ensure longer-term funding, and we are actively seeking opportunities to find short-term funding and work collaboratively. Please note that word, collaboratively, with others to secure more permanent funding for the future. This is an ongoing process. It has been ongoing, before and after this motion has been set, and in all likelihood will come to an agreeable end. And that's all I can say at the moment. But thank you. Thank you, Dimitri, for bringing it forward.
There's nobody else. Oh,
Chair, I don't know what the circumstances are of this organisation, but it is actually working. But it seems to me that if this is a particularly valuable service, that it seems logical that the council would work to see how it can support a period which allows the organisation some breathing space. Councillor Fox said that they were going to bring it to the PSB. There's a PSB tomorrow, is there not? Oh, it's not. Can we just get some assurance that that will go in a timely manner to the PSB if this is a discussion between partners, but that we'd like some assurance that the council will take some timely action to ensure that a service is not lost, which has wider social consequences that inevitably services of last resort will have to pick up. Thank you.
Right, nobody else? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Say that some years ago, Caldicot Town Council had an initiative for the elderly, and this organisation was heavily involved in that. And it's a fantastic organisation, does great work. So obviously I'm in favour of the motion, but I would like to say there's a wider question here in terms of funding for third sector bodies. They make a tremendous contribution to society. The social return and the amount of money that they save authorities like this is vast. And I think we really need to look in the future, not obviously this council, but perhaps in terms of what we do in Wales, in terms of making sure that these bodies are funded correctly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Nobody else has indicated they want to speak. Councillor Petrini, do you want to wind up? Or?
Yeah, just thanks, I think, cross-party support. And just to talk about the finances, as Councillor Davis mentioned, the social return, I'm reading it off the analysis of its impact is over £500,000 benefit to Monmouthshire. And in terms of money, Councillor Breakbow, absolutely right, £45,000 to keep it going for 6 months, £90,000 to keep it going for another year, I believe was the figures quoted. I originally put the figure in, but through subsequent conversations, it was hoped that PSB partners could contribute a bit more, so I didn't want to pin the council down to a specific figure. But I think we sort of left it open so the council could help in that regard, because I sense the determination from every section of this authority that we do not want to see this service in any way go under, because actually it's beneficial to all our residents who access that service, but also to this authority and the cost pressures we already are under. So it makes absolutely no sense to let this service fail.
Thank you, Dimitri. Will all those show, please, supporting this additional motion? It's very successfully carried. Thank you, Dimitri. You're back on your feet again, because the next motion, number 5.1, is from you as well.
I suspect a bit more controversy with this one, Chair. In June 2018, in a council meeting, I put a motion forward to create a local housing company in the hope of, in recognition of the housing crisis that Monmouthshire was facing then, it is facing now, and we all know the arguments of why those pressures are, particularly south of the county, and that many local authorities, including Bristol just across the water, had developed such innovative housing companies that had helped deliver the social housing, particularly those communities needed, in a way that was kind of appropriate to those communities. So Bristol's got a completely different demographic and land bank to Monmouthshire, but if you have your own company, you have control over that, where presently we're in the hands of the private market, particularly the big companies. So I put a motion forward in that regard, so we could have, for want of a better phrase, take back some control, and it was passed, I believe unanimously. I can't remember, it was unanimous, but it was by a majority. And we were assured, and I've quoted it in the motion there, that an evidence-based proposition, and those are the exact words that were said, would come back to full council by September 2018. It didn't come to council in September 2018 for there's various reasons, many of which are legitimate. So I let it slide. It was a council in October, didn't come to October. I let it slide because they are legitimate reasons. It didn't come to December, and then I raised my concerns in December, thinking that given an appropriate time, given it was meant to come back in September. I heard nothing from that, apart from that it went onto the action list, so I decided to put a motion down to push this, because it has been nearly 6 months, 6 months, but 4 or 5 months since the original motion. We haven't had, or even a hint of, an evidence-based proposition, so this is me trying to get it on the agenda again, and I hope it hasn't gone on ice.
Thank you. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, hang on.
Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dimitri. The terms that you've laid your motion perhaps slightly more politically sharpened than your introduction there. So I'm talking to your motion as you've written it, because you're dismayed and disappointed that the Tory administration has failed to deliver the evidence-based proposition. And I just sort of want to reflect back to your motion on what was agreed by Council on the 21st of June. You know, I left that meeting, that to be called out of that meeting, but some of the key elements in there and sentiments which you expressed was, I would like to work with my colleague leaders and the Cabinet member over the summer months with a view to bring forward an evidence-based proposition to Council in September. And group leaders were in support of the motion and happy to work together to achieve the progress on the issue. So, I left early, as you know, and I would have shared my thoughts at that time if I'd have been part of that final recommendation. But the time frame was unrealistic. We were looking to do. It was June the 21st. We're approaching the summer break. There's a lot going on, and personally, I couldn't get close to that for some while, so which I could apologise if there's a need to do that. So I was slightly disappointed to receive the motion, or to see the motion. We regularly meet within the investment committee and other areas, and I have not, and I cannot recall one time in the spirit of the motion you agreed on the 21st, where you've approached me directly as a leader or other leaders to forward this. Indeed, the first communications I've had with other people, in fairness, with Councillor Armand Watts, who rang me and made a strong case, which I still agree with. I just haven't been able to forward it at the time for obvious reasons, and that was to meet with Bristol City Council to look at some of the work that they are doing and learn some of the lessons from that. So I thank Armand for taking that initiative, and there was some obvious reasons why we hadn't perhaps progressed that from a member perspective. That's not to say that there hasn't been a lot of work going on with the wider topic of bringing forward affordable housing, which is the big thing. This is what we're about, isn't it? Bringing forward affordable housing. So I can, you're asking for an explanation in your motion. There will be that meeting set up with Bristol City Council. However, officers have also been meeting with the managing director of a affordable housing company which has been developed in Carmarthen by Carmarthenshire County Council. I've also spoken with the Forest of Dean, who are looking to do something similar on the way too, where they want to share some of their experiences as well, so that we can learn from that. But I think it's fair to say during the last few months, since motion, officers have been working extremely hard on the housing front, working on sites like bringing forward the Crick Road, Rockfield Road, the Church Road, Raglan, other crucial, important sites that will be delivering affordable housing opportunities in line with the corporate plans targets to increase the volume, quality, variety and affordability of housing. So, and you'll know also that Sarah Jones is picking up the housing brief now. She's not with us today, but I know Sarah is very keen to be taking forward the agenda, and has made it clear to me that she will want to be making progress and will want to bring a progress report to this council, hopefully this spring, probably April. And that will discuss a whole range of things around housing development and other sorts of things within that brief. So, brief explanation. Yes, we haven't accelerated it like we should. I put my hand up to some of that from a political front. However, there has been work going on, and I don't think anything has been delayed or opportunities lost through not having something before you in September. It was an unrealistic timescale we set ourselves, this council set itself, because we as leaders have not sat down. None of us as leaders has initiated that conversation to sit down and take it forward, yourselves included. So I think we have a duty as a council to collectively recognise that we haven't made the progress on this as we would like, but we can expect a report in April, I understand, certainly this spring, to perhaps take things further.
Thank you. Councillor Debbie Blakeborough.
Thanks. And again, thanks, Councillor Petroni, for putting this forward as a motion. I think life is very, very busy, and trying to keep things on the agenda, and what you've done is just made sure that's on the agenda. I know every opportunity is taken. Martin Grocott, you regularly bring it up in Adult Select because we're consistently talking about the problem with homelessness, and with our, as an authority at the moment, failure to meet those affordable housing targets. And this is an important and very exciting piece of the jigsaw in order to address some of those issues. I do believe there's a will there. I think people are wanting that. I think you're right, and I think you said at the meeting that it was unrealistic. It was an unrealistic time frame. I think taking this forward, what we probably need to do is put an honest, realistic time frame together, because Adult Select is really looking forward to having a proposal come to us so we can start scrutinising it. This thing is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long time, and we need to start sooner rather than later. So I do think we probably need to get our heads together and get a time frame, a schedule together to push that forward. So again, thanks for bringing this up to put it on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Howarth.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon. I think Councillor Blakeborough is quite right there. It was mentioned in the meeting in June that I thought the timescales were very, very tight in delivering something. Dimitri, you are right in what you're saying. We need to move this forward, and to bring it back on the agenda today is useful. But I still believe it's going to sit here again because we need to push it on, and I don't want to keep pushing this on. It's not fair. It's not fair on the motion. The motion was set in stone that we would push it on. And I think cross-party, we need to get hold of this now and sit down and sort a meeting out as quickly as possible. I'm led to believe the Labour Party have had deep discussions on this also, which it's not a Labour Party motion, it's a council motion which we all decided we'd work together on this. So, Leader and Deputy Leader, can I leave it with you, please, to push this along as quickly as possible now. We've got a busy time coming ahead with budgets also, so I don't know where this is going to fit in the calendar, but we must set some timescales as quickly as possible. I know the Chief Executive, I know you was involved in the discussion of this. If you look at the video of the meeting we had on this, it's quite clear the timescales were not viable to deliver where we were on this. And you did speak on this, Paul, as well. And I believe that with your influence as well, perhaps with speaking with others at a different level, perhaps we may be able to move it forward in a different direction also, which will help us then deliver our own agenda plus this. Thank you.
Chair, thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Simon's request, as I shared, Sarah can't be here today. She's a new portfolio holder on it, very keen to make progress on this. As I said, she's minded to bring forward a report, and I know officers are already on that same wavelength, to bring a report back here in the spring, and she's suggesting April, so that we can start that deep conversation. Okay, so I've made that commitment.
Thank you. Councillor Francis Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important that Dimitri has brought this back today, and I have to say I was quite heartened initially, because I understand, you know, as Councillor Fox mentioned, Councillor Watts had done some kind of organising of discussions between, for example, Bristol. So I was kind of heartened that we were also looking outside of Wales. So looking a bit further afield at the kind of models that could work. It's good to hear that Peter suggests that we are going to be bringing a report in April. But I suppose with all respect, that's still almost a year from our initial debate. And we've just had young people in the room talking about the fact that one of their key concerns is homelessness. We'll debate this later, but you'll know, members, that with the advent of the 7 tolls disappearing, that's had a real impact on our local housing market and potentially creates a further element to the housing crisis that we're seeing. And I really would welcome, seeing something come forward as soon as is possible. So could I just ask the leader then, if possible, could we be either assured or updated if that, for example, if there's any slippage with April, can we just get an update, please? Councillor Fox, thank you.
Chairman, I don't know if I can hear very well up there, but I have said that a report will be coming in the spring via Sarah Jones, and officers are working on that, to start this deeper conversation.
Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And perhaps I can put a bit of context to this. The first thing is that the creation of a local housing company may well cut across the terms and conditions of the housing stock transfer, so a housing company as such may not be possible. The proposals that we're looking at is we have a development company that when housing stock or land is available, it can turn its attention to it. So there's a lot of due diligence has to be done with regards to the legalities of how we set this up. That doesn't mean to say we're not going to set it up, it only determines how we set it up. The meetings with other authorities have been arranged, and so that part of it is well on its way. And at the moment, we don't have any sites that would be suitable to put into it. The sites that are supportable and in the pipeline are the Melin ones, all the housing associations. It's on. Don't, please, Mr. Chair, when somebody's talking, if somebody else presses their button, the camera goes to them, the microphone goes to them, and people can't hear what's being said. So it's not really very good, is it? So we do have arrangements with Melin, Monmouthshire Housing are particularly looking at it. There's an awful lot of work has already gone on with this. So can we please wait until the report comes forward in April, which will tell us how far we've got and the legalities of what we're able to do.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Harris.
Thank you, Chair. It's just sad that we're all in the room and breakdown of communications lead us to this pass here. It's good to know, and the public now know, our residents now know, that we are still on board to explore the results of this motion, and it's important that, and we'll make sure, Peter, that your report does come in April. I'm sure you'll move heaven and earth to make sure it does now. So let's just reassure the public out there that, and especially with the LDP being looked at the moment, to let potential developers know if they've got anything sitting around quietly that they might be interested in what we're saying here. So we've been reminded. Let's all get on with it as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Andre Watts. Howard Watts.
You say it was Andre then? I'm going to be careful about what I say and guarded, because I don't want to wind up the Conservative Party too much for fear then that they might just get bloody minded and dig their heels in and say, well, it's a political thing and we don't want to meet with Bristol City Council. Bristol City Council have already met with other Conservative authorities, and they're happy to come and have a conversation with us. And the reason for that is that we could spend a lot of money, as we often do with consultancies, and spend literally hundreds of thousands of pounds. We have an opportunity to explore an authority where best practice is evidenced, and that's the reason behind my thinking. I think Phil's explanation, forgive me for saying it, Phil, is a bit lame, in as much as that, you know, some of those discussions about working alongside housing associations, they've already done it. And we won't know that until you've had that conversation. So you're putting the cart before the horse, you're making excuses for yourself. But in the spirit of peace and love and understanding, I'll happily continue to engage with all those people that are continually interested with this, in the hope that we will sit down and have a proper conversation with people who can, you know, basically show us the way, so we don't end up making expensive mistakes, and that we can expedite this, not for ourselves, not politically, but for the people that need houses and homes to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Armin. No one else wishes to make a contribution? No? Do you want to wind up, Dimitri?
In the motion, I put Tory administration because it's just a statement of fact. You are a Conservative administration. But I recognise that you put your hands up that maybe political leadership in this regard hasn't been pushed. But I haven't approached you directly, that's true, but I have been pursuing officers quietly in the background in those months. And I have had emails assuring me that it will be at the October meeting, and then that never happened. So I've had those assurances, and it just never transpired. And I appreciate it's busy, and I appreciate there's some special circumstances in this regard. So I let it slide till January, but I put this motion so we could have this debate and it's not off the agenda, because there's a habit of these motions going and then just dropping off and never being heard from again. And this is too important for this local authority, particularly with our housing problem, as other councillors have eloquently put it. In that regard, and if you expect, and I would hope you said you would hope, I would expect a report by April. I'm happy to withdraw the motion.
Was that, yeah, thank you, Dimitri. Yeah, but Sarah assured me that that's what she's expecting. She's not here today, but I know officers, I've already spoken with officers, and we're minded to bring a report for April. So I thank you for the withdrawal of that, and thank you for allowing me to explain.
As there is a withdrawal, we don't need to vote, and we go straight on to the next Councillor Petroni motion.
I'm not doing three motions again, Chair, be sure of that. This one is political, and rightly so, because at the budget last year, the Conservative administration put this proposal forward to put £1 charge on the childcare element of the free school breakfast, which is a half-an-hour addition to the breakfast being served and the children eating it. It was exempting free school meal pupils, and was done on the basis that they needed to raise revenue, and that I think it was 140,000, but I'm happy to be corrected on that, was the estimated income for this. At the time, the Labour group opposed this, and we put amendments forward that could fund not doing this. It was rejected at the time because we think this is, and still think it's, a socially regressive policy. Incidentally, I heard on the grapevine that it was muted, or admittedly not in the final budget proposals, to increase it to £2, which prompted me to do this motion, because this is, in my view, and the Labour group's view, a socially regressive motion, and I'll explain why. Who this hits the most is not the parents and the children on free school meals, or who are at least eligible for free school meals. It is just about managing. I think the UK Prime Minister talked about this group, who work damn hard, all the hours God sends, but they're not eligible for benefits, but they don't have huge wages. And it really hits them the hardest, these kind of charges. And if you look at figures and I could only ask for schools where children attended from my ward, which was Thornwell Primary and Pembroke, there's been a noticeable drop in the numbers. So for Pembroke, there's a 60 children drop per week since the introduction of the charge. So that's 3 months before the summer recess and then 3 months after. For Thornwell, it's an 8% drop, and I can send you all the figures if you so wish. I don't want to regurgitate them here, but it's a noticeable drop as soon as the charge is introduced, and then diminishes actually in many instances further. And admittedly, this is only a snapshot. It's only 2 schools in the Chepstow region. It is not a cross-county analysis. But incidentally, when I asked, and I remember actually went back and listened to the debate, I was promised by the Cabinet Member for Social Justice, I was promised by other members that this would be monitored and looked at, and we'll make sure. And when I asked officers, what was the data telling us, or have we looked this across the piece, we're not collecting or holding that data at the moment, Councillor, was the response. I was advised to ask individually as a member to ask the schools individually what data was telling them. So it's what I did. So there was no tracking, there was no monitoring, contrary to all the promises we heard from the group and the commitment to the social justice agenda. It was lukewarm, not at all tracking this issue. And I urge the Conservatives to really think about this policy, because it is affecting those families who do play by the rules, who do work hard, and you are punishing them.
Thank you very much. Councillor John, did you want to respond or not?
Are there any other contributions
All right.
that I can respond to?
Is there a seconder for that? Obviously there is. Thank you, Dimitri. Right, Councillor Francis Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I actually did write to Councillor John very shortly after that budget discussion around adding £1 for the childcare element. And as you say, Councillor Petruni, we were assured that it would be monitored, because we were concerned that it would affect disproportionately families, working families, who use the childcare element, and some of those who are on particularly low incomes but that perhaps are not eligible for any other benefits. And from that point of view, we were assured that as part of the monitoring, which should occur through the equality impact assessment, that it would be monitoring. And I am really dismayed to hear that we are not monitoring that. And I think that is really surprising, given our commitment and, you know, a portfolio for social justice. So I do think that we need to see, for assurance purposes, what exactly is happening in terms of monitoring. We need to take assurance, and I would really welcome, Councillor John, if you could supply us with a further impact assessment based on what the information that Councillor Petruni has described, and understanding perhaps the reasons why families are no longer using those breakfast clubs. Is it due to the charge? I know the schools were concerned, and I'm sure that Will can bear this out, that they would have to collect that money. So the burden of administration is on schools. We know that schools already struggle to collect, for example, outstanding dinner money payment sometimes, and that is quite can be quite an issue in some areas. So I'd really welcome if we could see some information to understand and have a clear picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tudor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I declare an interest as a governor on the governing body of Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni in Abergavenny. The figures that Councillor Dimitri Bartw has given are borne out in Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni. Something like 40 children avail themselves of the breakfast club, but over a quarter of those, 10 of those, do not pay for the childcare element. And the thing that really concerns me is the situation, and I've spoken to parents, and Ysgol Gymraeg Efenni has got a very wide catchment across the town and across the rural area. But there are a number of parents, both are working, often in low-paid jobs. Some of them have 2 jobs each, and are, to quote Theresa May, they're just about managing. And I am really concerned about those. The children on free school meals obviously don't have to pay. It's having a very negative effect on the families who do have to pay. I said this time last year, if you've got 3 children, which is not unusual, then you are ending up paying £60 a month. And if you're on a low income, that is a substantial amount of money to actually pay up each month. For them, the childcare element is important in terms of allowing those parents to get, if they're both working, of putting the children into the childcare element and having the breakfast, for them to actually get to work on time. And certainly, we hear it all the time, and I don't disagree with it. We want people to work. We want people to earn their own keep. It is very important, and I always thought it was a tenet supported by the Conservative Party about working, but yet we are disadvantaging people who are, albeit on low incomes, they work hard and they're having this double whammy. If it were to go up another £1 per child, then that would be an absolute disgrace. I certainly hope that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Debbie Blakeborough.
Thank you. There was a lot I was wanting to say, but Tudor's actually sort of said a lot of that in terms of putting it into context. Because the idea of free breakfast club, it's not free at all because people are having to pay, and although it might be just £1, if you've got 2 children, that works out round about sort of £40 a month. And if you're earning 16,000 or less, so you are earning, it's a big pressure, really. I think the word review, I think it is so important, and we've been talking about this because we've got new budgets coming up that we're looking at, and we're looking at equality impact assessments and the effects of our policy changes. Now, yes, then if it's not even happen here, I'm a bit worried it's not going to happen with the new budgets that are coming forward in the future. So we do need to know the impact on families in changing this. What's happened? I've disappeared off the screen. Oh. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, the dark hole. But let's be clear here. Just to get this right, and perhaps Councillor John, you could help me. The Welsh Government, have they not reduced the funding to local authorities since we're in this situation? So I think at all levels, you know, they're hitting the low-income families. So yes, we need to look at what we're doing, but I think the Welsh Government also needs to review their cutting of the grant to the local authorities that affects this area.
Thank you. No one else? Do you wish to want? No, sorry, you've come on. Yes, Councillor Watts.
Yes, Chair. Well, just to add to everything that Dimitri really said, it was, you know, you really are putting a financial imposition on people that are already struggling. You only have to look at the figures relating to deprivation in, you know, some of the kind of key wards, really, the obvious wards. That should tell you everything you need to know that it's potentially a bad idea. And lo and behold, then you find out that it's actually fallen down. The behaviour, we've told you for years now. This isn't the first time you've done this. We told you before when you tried to do it and you abandoned it, that it was a bad idea. And then you went ahead and did it, and lo and behold, I'm sorry to say that we told you so, but it ended up being a bad idea. It's almost like some economic Fagin, you know, checking down, hustling children's families for a few extra kind of coin. It was completely unnecessary, and it's obviously been rejected. They simply don't want to take this up because they can't afford it. So please pay attention to what Dimitri's saying. I hope you abandon this ASAP. Thank you.
Councillor Joe Watkins.
Thank you. Now that's not working as well. Can you hear me even if the video's not working? Okay. Okay, so I obviously objected at the time. I also raised the fact that we were putting up dinner money at the same time, so we were doing a double whammy to these parents who were just about managing. So my question and my call is that what are we actually going to do about finding out what this impact has actually been? It was said that it was going to raise money. Has it? How much money has it raised? And do we actually then deem that that was actually a valid way to actually judge things? How are we going to monitor it? Just speaking to the school secretary at my children's school, parents are not using the service in part because they then have to book significantly in advance because we've had to put in a whole administrative system that parents don't like either. So we've made it doubly difficult. Parents have to use an online system. They have to do it 24 hours in advance. They have to do all sorts of things. So we are not necessarily making it easy for our parents, even if it is a system that works. And I don't believe it does. So please, what are you actually going to do to make sure that you do monitor this properly, you do actually find out how much money it raises, and we do actually really pay attention to the parents who are really struggling, because bearing in mind, it's these children's eating we're talking about. These children who then start the school day without having had a good meal, and then how are we actually going to expect them to get fully through the day and really make full benefit of their education?
Thank you. Councillor John.
Thank you very much. I will try to respond to as many of the points that members have raised as I can, as well as raising a number of other points that I wish to make. So you'll recall that 12 months ago we introduced this charge. We delayed the introduction to September 2018 because we wanted as much time as possible to work with schools about how the charge would be implemented. We wanted to reduce the burden as much as possible on staff. So it's collected through parent pay. The question that Councillor Taylor raised about administration, we recognised that was an issue, so that's why we delayed that implementation, so we could work with schools to ensure that that was as smooth as possible. But I recognise that that still may be a deterrent. You still have to set up a separate parent pay account, separate to the school meals. You need to keep that topped up. I appreciate there's an administrative burden that may be a deterrent to accessing the Breakfast Club. There are a number of other reasons as well why parents may choose not to access something that was previously free. So we introduced this charge, we made the decision 12 months ago, following another awful settlement received from the Welsh Government, the worst funded council of any in Wales, and we had to make some really difficult decisions to be able to protect school budgets, which in last year's budget we agreed to do. Now, Councillor Blakeborough made the point about the grants. There used to be a school breakfast grant, which came into local authorities. Welsh Government scrapped that in 2013 and put money into the revenue support grant instead, which has been chipped away year after year, and we've had the deepest cuts of any council to that. So that has put significant pressure on this policy. And I think there was a real question about fairness and whether it is fair for council taxpayers to subsidise free childcare as a universal benefit. We felt that that's something that should be means tested, so that people who can afford to make a contribution, a £1 contribution towards the cost of childcare, we felt that was reasonable, particularly when you consider how much you would pay for half an hour's childcare in the private sector. So there was a real question about fairness. We're not making a profit from breakfast clubs. We didn't introduce this as some sort of cash cow. And I have to say to Councillor Petrini, don't believe what you hear on the grapevine. I'll talk about monitoring in a moment, but it would be quite irresponsible to propose to double the cost before we've even finished assessing the impact that this policy is having. It's only been in place for a term, so we're still monitoring that. So we're certainly not proposing to double the cost, the £1 charge. £1 is in line with what many other local authorities charge. I note the charge in Swansea is as much as £1.50 per session. The alternative is to do what a number of local authorities have done, which is close the first half of the breakfast club. So you can no longer drop your children off at 8 o'clock. You just turn up, have your breakfast in that short session, and we would be completely denying parents the opportunity to access affordable childcare from 8 a.m. and the opportunity to be in work for 9. I think it's important that we offer parents a choice, and that's what this policy does. No one has to take up the breakfast clubs. They are optional. And we feel that giving parents that choice, enabling them to drop their children off early, is really important. There's a wide range of different families in Monmouthshire with different needs, and it's important, I think, that we offer that support to them. Now, the £1 charge has been in place for one term, and since the end of the autumn term, we've been examining the evidence about the impact that this policy is having on families in the county. This time last year, we said we anticipated a drop in attendance following the introduction of the charge, although that drop has exceeded our expectations. 27 primary schools in Monmouthshire operate before school clubs. Councillor Petruni has brought this motion to us today, having spoken to just 2. And while those 2 have had a drop, there is no evidence to say that there's been a negative impact. There's been a reduction in the number of children attending Breakfast Club, but you don't have any evidence to say that the children no longer attending are those who are either eligible for free school meals or are those who are just above the threshold. That's why you can't simply look at numbers and jump to some knee-jerk conclusion and say that this isn't working or this is affecting the most needy in society. We have to do detailed assessment of the impact that this is having, and you can't just do that willy-nilly by asking 2 schools how many kids attend their breakfast clubs. So we need a far more detailed picture to be able to draw proper conclusions. The evidence we've obtained so far is that children eligible for free school meals continue to attend breakfast clubs in great numbers. And perhaps even greater, because the rollout of universal credit has resulted in a 29% increase in the number of children eligible for free school meals in Monmouthshire. So there are a number of families who previously would have been just above the £1 threshold who are now brought under it. Now, while we've gathered evidence about attendance, we need more quality data about the impact that it's having on low-income families who may be just above that threshold for free school meals. So just as I can't say at the moment with any certainty that no low-income family has been deterred from attending breakfast clubs due to the £1 charge, we can also not claim that it is a deterrent. What the evidence shows so far is there has been a drop in attendance at many breakfast clubs for children who would not be eligible for free school meals. But not all. Some schools have reported static attendance for the same period in 2017, such as Overmonnow, Landogo, Yscol y Ffin or Llanfoist, while Castle Park has seen an increase in attendance since the fee was introduced. We've also got figures of the income that schools are getting from breakfast clubs, and there's a significant difference between schools in some better off parts of the county compared to less well-off areas. So, for instance, take Undie Primary School. In the autumn term, the breakfast clubs raised £4,000. Derry View had the same number of students attending each day at their breakfast club, and that raised £60 in the autumn term. So you can see that in more deprived areas, we're bringing in less money because you've got children who are eligible for free school meals continuing to take up that breakfast. And of course, this is why the Welsh Government introduced it in the first place. It's because we know that having a breakfast means that you are in a much better place to learn. And it's really important to us that young people start the school day in a position to learn. So that's why we felt it was really important that children from more deprived backgrounds had that best start to the school day. We do not have any evidence from our head teachers that children are arriving at school hungry or not in a position to learn. Now, of course, we need to continue these conversations with schools to see how the scheme is bedding in, and we need to ensure that it is not having a negative impact on the most vulnerable in society. There are a range of reasons why parents may choose not to pay for breakfast clubs. If more children are enjoying breakfast at home before going into school and having a healthy breakfast with their family, who are we to poke our nose in and say that's a bad thing? Parents have the right to make their own decisions about what is best for their children. You used to be able to drop your child off any time from 8 a.m. for free. Now, a number of children still attend breakfast clubs from 8:30 onwards and incur no charge. But some parents may have been deterred now from dropping off their children for the latter part of that first half hour. Some parents who perhaps don't need to access breakfast clubs for their children may have chosen to do so in the past simply because it was free. I know the Welsh Government are very keen on their freebie policies, but everything does have a cost, and now it's directly chargeable. They may think twice about that. Now, as I say, we anticipated a drop of 10% this time last year in attendance at breakfast clubs. In the autumn term, there was a drop of 19%. When we introduced this charge, we were very clear that we wanted to assess the impact on the less well-off. That's why any child eligible for free school meals can continue to access clubs for free. But as we said 12 months ago, we are open to any suggestions of a more wide-ranging way of identifying children from a more deprived background. Certainly in England, the UK government has a broader, more encapsulating definition of ever free school meals. So if you have ever in your life been eligible for free school meals, you will always be eligible. Unfortunately, the Welsh Government has not taken up that more wide-ranging encapsulating definition. Now that the first term has ended, Councillor Sarah Jones and I have considerable work to do to continue to analyse the impact by talking to families affected and to gain a better understanding of the reasons why parents may choose not to access breakfast clubs.
Richard, you're in your last minute. One more minute.
Okay. But it would be quite wrong to leap to conclusions at this stage when we've only limited data from the first term of the impact this has had on less well-off families. So Councillor Jones and I will continue to assess the impact of this charge and will gladly report back to full council at a later date. Meanwhile, I would urge members to reject this provocative and knee-jerk motion based on very limited evidence so we can draw a more informed and evidence-based conclusion in future.
Thank you, Councillor. Roger Harris? You've got
Thank you,
10
Chair.
minutes, Roger. You have 10 minutes.
Right. It was fascinating that we heard from Dimitri that there was no evidence being fed back of any description from any officers, and we just had 10 minutes from Councillor John telling us there's vast amounts of evidence. So somebody can point me in the right direction there, and it must simply be because it's got to be the fault of the Welsh Government, there's no doubt about that, because that's all we get all the time. There is never any mention, and I'm fed up with standing up here and reminding people over there that austerity was started in 2010 and it's still going, and you never, ever, ever admit that anything that your government up in Westminster has done affects the Welsh Government and the amount of money it has to put down the line. Come on, just get real. So anyway, we maybe we'll hear the answer between there's no evidence and there's tons of evidence. I look forward to it.
Well run, Roger. Minute and a half. Okay, we've all had a word. Dimitri, do you want to wind up?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. There's a wide-ranging response, and I'll try and deal with most of the responses. It's amazing, Chairman, though, when I asked for similar evidence that Richard's just given us 10 days ago, it was, we don't have it, Councillor, what you can do in 10 days when there's a motion down, isn't it? Remarkable stuff. On the Welsh Government, let's deal with this straight away. Councillor Breakborough, I believe, mentioned it. Maybe the toys once or twice mentioned it. And I know we don't want to go into a wide debate about austerity, but it's like they sort of ignore what happens in England on local government. So it's interesting to know in local government in England, 1.3 billion has been cut to their budgets. That's 36% taken out of English local authorities. So to somehow pretend that Welsh Government is just a kind of enigma or anomaly when it comes to constraints around finances is a myth. It is just a myth. Now, we can debate about how you spend that money, but to pretend it's not happening in England to a greater extent is delusional, which is what the Prime Minister is doing at the moment with Brexit as well. So it doesn't strike me the Tories are in denial. Councillor John talked about that I shouldn't go on rumours. So I take that as on record, there was no proposal from officers to increase it to £2. That's what the Cabinet member's saying. I just want to be sure of that. That's what you're saying, that there was no proposal to increase charges to £2. So as long as you give me that reassurance, that's interesting, because that's not what I can support in evidence terms. this is, he's quite right though to mention, and it's my academic hat on, that and I'm very clear in the motion about this, that it's from some schools in Chepstow. I literally put that down on a piece of paper. It's right, it's not about Monmouthshire. I recognise that in my opening statement because that is true, that's a fact. I do not have the evidence across, although I asked for it, was not able to get it. And so I could only ask legitimate, really, the secretaries from the schools, even though neither school is in my ward actually, but from children who attended those schools from my ward, for that data. Hence, I can only say some schools in Chepstow, which I'm very clear about. I am kind of nerdy-ish about that, so I don't make any broader claims. And it does indicate there is an issue there, Richard. And you're absolutely right to say that, can I absolutely pin it? No, I haven't gone to spoke to those families, but the qualitative evidence when you speak to those secretaries about the families that they have noticed, because they know the schools and know those children better than I do, and I suspect than you do, will tell you that those are the families that are being most affected. So that's the evidence I'm bringing forward. That's why I really was keen to put this down. And just the fact I've put this motion down, that you and your officers have started to look at the data, is really heartwarming. So my job done, motion done. Even though you reassured me, and Councillor Jones reassured me, it'd be monitored. No, it wasn't. It wasn't being monitored. Well, if it was, I would have, when I asked for the data, I would have got the data, but the response was, we not hold that data. So that's why I had to individually go to the schools. But I appreciate now it's being done, and that's great news, but I still stick to the motion.
Right, will all those in favour of Councillor Lee Petroni's motion please show? Okay, Matt, is Matt all right? Those against the motion please show. I think the motion is defeated. Right, we now go on to a motion from our leader, Councillor Fox. Councillor Fox, do you wish to put it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that some colleagues, certainly from the south, may not be able to support my motion, and I quite understand if that proves a difficulty for them. Indeed, from my own group as well. But I think it's important that we I brought this motion forward. I mean, the entire South Wales economy will be held back unless the Welsh Government makes a long-awaited decision to deliver a new motorway around Newport. Fantastic opportunities are being unlocked throughout South Wales. The removal of the bridge tolls was hugely welcomed. It tore down that barrier to business and paves the way for a new world of economic activity in South Wales. The Cardiff Capital Region City deal and the Swansea Bay deal are also laying tremendous foundations to put Wales on the global map for future inward investment. However, these opportunities won't be realised whilst the chronic congestion at the Brynglas tunnels is left unaddressed. David Cameron aptly described the tunnels and the congestions they create as a foot on the windpipe of the Welsh economy, a statement I believe most businesses in Wales would agree with. The UK government has supported the development of a new motorway and have increased the amount Welsh ministers can borrow to help finance the project. So Wales government has the tools it needs to do this. They now need to lead and deliver. But I fear yet again they are looking for a way out. I hope I'm wrong. It's inconceivable that the Wales government would delete an opportunity to turn the fortunes of Wales around. The government needs to demonstrate that it is truly committed to its businesses and communities by allowing its people to benefit from the opportunities being created. Wales government must not turn its back on businesses at this crucial time. Through this motion, I'm calling on Wales Government to make an urgent decision in favour of building a new motorway around Newport. I don't care which route it is, what colour it is. I'm not going to go into a debate about green, blue, pink or purple. I just want a solution. And for them to support the people of Monmouthshire and the wider Cardiff Capital Region, and indeed all of South Wales, by investing in this vital project. I know I will be challenged that I haven't referred to other key bits of infrastructure needed, but I may apologise, as the focus of this motion today has to be on the M4 relief. We will focus on other key things on different times. And I know also there will be some who feel we should be looking to rail for the answers, but I am a realist. And I know that the day rail is ready to replace all that needs a road is many decades off. So, Mr. Chairman, I think the motion is pretty self-explanatory, that this council reaffirms its support for the proposed M4 relief road, recognising how fundamental it will be in unlocking the economic future of South Wales. And I ask the motion be put.
Is it seconded? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jim Higginson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, this thing has been around for quite too long, in fact. And we've had many people from our neck of the woods, as the from Caldigott, Meagher and the area, Roggett areas, who have been looking for this for many, many years. Admittedly, there are some people who are closer to it, in that it's going to run down the bottom of their backyard type of thing. I can understand why they're objecting to it and that. But at the same time, you have to recognise the fact that there are many, many bottlenecks between the Severn Bridge and the other side of Newport. There's no argument about it whatsoever. They done the A40, A10, which is the old steelworks road, runs from Meagher out to Spitty. And what happens when you get is on a lovely road, it's got 50-mile-an-hour, drop into 40, drop into 30. But what happens when you get to the other side? You've got a bottleneck. It's just not good enough. It's costing. We've heard this argument about bottlenecks and delays on the road costing jobs, and there's no argument about it. I know someone from the other side of Newport who sold their house over 2 years ago for this M4 relief road, and I think it's a disgrace that that it's been dragging on for so long. And I appreciate what the comments have been made about the Welsh government, but there was an inquiry had to be held because of the objections to it. And as a consequence of that inquiry, I'd like to know how much the cost of that road, when it does eventually start, is going to be from what it originally was going to cost. Because you can bet, I bet it's 3 or 4 times the original cost at this moment in time. And and I just want to finish by saying this: it's a pity there's too much NIMBYism around.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jane Pratt.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I totally support Councillor Fox's motion because the Gateway to Wales has been totally neglected by successive Labour ministers for many years, which is illogical when £270 million with a projected overspend of £50.83 million is being spent on the A465. There are opportunities to expand the Welsh economy and create more jobs, improving the life chances of our future generations in South East Wales. But this will not reach its full potential unless the problems of the Bryn Glass tunnels are sorted out. I agree with Councillor Fox. We need to see urgent action by the Minister. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Councillor Debbie Blakeborough.
Thanks, Chair. When looking at this, I guess it is about looking at why do they want to do it, what's the problem, what's the outcomes they want from putting that bypass there. And the idea is to reduce journey time so people can get to their places of business quicker, reduce congestion and reduce the negative environmental impact. That's what they want from this. They're not going to get it from this. It's not sustainable. It's certainly not an effective and efficient use of public money, and it takes priority over other better solutions to the bigger problem. So not sustainable. You've heard the term build it and they will come. If you build a road, the cars will come and it will get congested again. When you look at the M25, that's the biggest bypass around a big city, and I don't know how many lanes it is now, is it 6 or 7? But it's still congested because the bigger you make the roads, the more cars will come and fill it. So it will not last forever, that you've got a clear run through. And then you look at Airport Talbot, so we've got a pollution problem there. Instead of looking at ways of taking the cars off the road, they're going to slow the cars down to 50 mile an hour. Really good sense that. Value for money? Certainly not value for money. It started off, I think, at the, and Councillor Higgins was saying that the price tag keeps going up. It started at 700 million. I think they're projecting it between 1.3 and 1.5 billion pounds for 14 miles of tarmac. I am going to steal your thunder, I think, Councillor Taylor, but we were looking at it. That's a 100 million mile. That's what you can class it, the 100 million mile road that will be. And if you look at the cost-benefit analysis, the cost is huge, not just financially, but you're going to have years of chaos while it's being built, and we know that's going to happen. And the benefit, one, it's just going to be temporary, and two, it's minute. It's minutes we're saving. If you look at how we're looking at this, I know Councillor Fox wants to focus on this, but we really do need a serious systems approach to the problem for Wales. The bottlenecks, we might clear that, but the bottleneck will come to junction 29 when where the bypass is going to meet. We've got bottlenecks going in and out of our cities, trying to get in and out of Newport and Cardiff. The cities are not built to take this volume of traffic in and out. We need the credible alternatives, and we know about what the credible alternatives. I mean, one of them is a car share. That's not going to cost a lot of money. Let's have a car share. So if you've got more than one person in your car, you take the outer lane. I know you're sort of grimacing there, but these are simple things that can reduce the number of cars. If I know I'll get there quicker, I will car share. I won't just go in the car on my own, so it will automatically change that behaviour. Park and ride, we talk about it forever, but nothing ever happens. We need real powerful reasons for computers to come off the road. So that means an integrated, a flexible, a reliable and affordable public transport system. Our system in Wales is below standard. I know the word I want to use, but it is well below standard. It is not fit for purpose. So from this, the solution, this will provide a solution that will add value to the whole of Wales and not just 14 miles of tarmac. It will be a solution for the many and not just the few. So I would say, yeah, you've got to put it in. You've got to agree with me on saying that. Come on, you're in for the many and not for the few. So the motion, I can't support it. Because this motion is supporting a project that is only dealing with one of the many symptoms of a bigger, much bigger problem. You would class it as a sticking plaster solution. And I have to say, 1.5 billion is an awfully expensive sticking plaster. Thank you.
Councillor Crocott, are you going to give us words of wisdom now?
I'd like to propose an amendment, Chair.
That's Bob's job.
This was actually an amendment that was going to be put by Councillor Eason, but in his inability to be here this afternoon, I was going to second it. So I'll propose Tony's motion instead, and maybe a colleague can second it. Thank you, Councillor Vitruni. The wording of my amendment: this council reaffirms its support for the proposed M4 Relief Road, but also seeks greater clarity from Welsh Government regarding the South Wales Metro and the associated road and rail transport connections, recognising how fundamental they will be to unlock the economic future of South Wales following the welcome decision to remove the Severn Bridge tolls. The Council is extremely disappointed. Sorry, I've just lost that. Yeah, here we are. Sorry, Tony's motion disappeared from my tablet, but it's back. The Council is extremely disappointed that progress towards making positive decisions regarding these matters are urgently needed. This Council therefore calls upon the Welsh Government to demonstrate its unequivocal support to the communities and businesses of South East Wales by delivering these key pieces of infrastructure. To these ends, the Council asks the Leader to write to the First Minister expressing its strong views.
In moving that, Chairman, I take on board all the points that Councillor Blakeborough just made. I would add a plea on behalf of the wildlife that lives in SSSIs on the Gwent levels. And I think that once we start to ignore the wildlife and the ecology that lives around us, we are on a very slippery slope. I took comfort from the leader of the council's words that we're not talking about a specific route. I would have had really very great difficulties when we're talking about the preferred route, because I think in many ways expediency will cause irreparable damage to wildlife. But I take that. It's not a reference to a specific route, but nonetheless, despite what Councillor Fox says about rail, we are spending tens of millions of pounds on electrifying the South Wales railway line. We have a very grand project that will alleviate many of those problems of short journey travel on our local motorway through the introduction of the metro. And I think just to see the M4 relief in isolation would be a wrong policy. And so I would urge you to support my amendment.
Our Chief Executive wishes to come in at this juncture.
This is always difficult ground, but I don't think what I've heard is an amendment. I think it's far too fundamental to be an amendment. I think you've just positioned a very different motion. It's not my judgment call. It's a matter for the chair to consider his view. But that's my view, Councillor Graucut, so I offer it for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Fox?
Yeah, and I thank Martin and Tony for bringing that forward. But I believe actually the elements that you've added are worthy of a motion in their own right, and actually detract from the real issues that I wanted to debate here. The focus, we'll start talking about trains, and that's a cop-out for the government to turn its back on. I'm an advocate for trains. I'm part of the city region, city deal, and what the metro is going to do is going to be brilliant. But I said at the beginning about being a realist, and actually the problems and the opportunities we have are here now and are growing. A rail solution isn't going to be the answer to those initial issues. So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that that the elements which have been added are worthy of a motion in their own right at some other date, and I hope you wouldn't allow that as an amendment.
Okay, it's my decision, and I'm going to rule that it is not an amendment, and we go back to the original motion. Councillor Giles Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. This won't come as a surprise to the leader that I won't be able to support the motion, because the wording of it says the proposed M4 relief road, and the proposed road is the preferred black route, and I don't agree with that. I do agree with other members that I really would like to see the results of the inquiry. They seem to have gone into Welsh Government, and I don't know whether they've been hidden or the ramifications of it are so deep that a quick answer can't be provided. But if the answer is to be no, then for a change I would applaud the Welsh Government and recognise that no is sometimes the hardest answer. And I think rather than repeat it and go over the arguments that we've rehashed in here many times, there's no need for that, and that's not what the motion asks for. I do agree with just about everything that Councillor Blakeborough has said. And whilst I think that an urgent solution is required for travel across Newport, what is proposed doesn't reflect ongoing bottlenecks from junction 28 further westwards, in that, as proposed, the scheme would seek to speed up traffic to the next available bottleneck, which is probably in the two-lane solution past Cardiff Gate and around the top of Cardiff. And that's the big issue. I mean, all of that hasn't been modelled. You're not going to suddenly unlock the Welsh economy. You're just going to create a larger traffic jam in a slightly different place.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Greenland.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's now 20 years that we've been talking about this relief road. 20 years that the Welsh Government has had to come to a conclusion, and every time it looks as if they're going to reach that conclusion, it's put on the back burner again. And while it's being put on the back burner, we see the increase in traffic on the M4. 20 years ago, you could go through and very rarely see the backup of traffic going beyond the Caldera. Today, every day, that backup of traffic is on the Caldera. And it isn't a matter of just a couple of minutes extra on the journey. That's not the thing at all. It's the effect on these constant traffic jams on the economy of the whole of the region. People are not going to invest and bring their businesses to this part of the world if they're finding that getting their goods out, getting their people out or in, is going to be held up in the way that it is at the moment. It's just having a detrimental effect on the way that this area of the country can develop. And we see it in the low wage levels that we have around our area. And we have really got to grasp this situation now. And we have got to have a road that provides a good alternative, not even one with a roundabout, which is going to slow the traffic down. It was probably around about 12 years ago that I was cabinet member for highways. It was in the last county hall, and it was when Colin Berg was our chief executive. And he and I met with the then director of the scheme. And the director of the scheme told us, you know, the trouble with the problem really is that just like every other motorway, at some stage after its construction, it needs a complete reconstruction. And he told us that the substrata of the M4 around Newport was cracking up. And the solution to that would be that it has to be rebuilt, and that would require each carriageway to be closed for 6 months. Now, that was fairly urgent when he came to see us then. How urgent must it be now? Can you imagine what would the economy of South Wales would be like if we had a carriageway of the M4 around Newport closed for 6 months? It would devastate the economy of South Wales and further beyond. And that is, for me, one of the major issues. The existing M4 will need substantial rebuilding, and what happens when that takes place if there isn't an alternative route to go on? And I support the motion, but I would also ask that we ask the Welsh Government about the issue of the repair of the existing M4, and does it need substantial rebuilding, and when has that got to take place? Because for me, the loss of the M4, one carriageway for 6 months, would be a disaster. But it's because of that that people are not investing in the way that they are into South Wales. And it is something, Chairman, which we have to now tackle, or the Welsh Government has to tackle, because it's not us, it's them. And as the leader has said, so much has been done to free up the area of South Wales in the removal of the tolls and in the work that's going on through the city region to generate it. But all the time, businesses look at the congestion on the M4 and they think they can't trust it. This has got to be launched. This boil that is an internal boil within the Welsh Government, the arguments they're having, has got to be launched. The last First Minister, back in the spring, I happened to be at a reception, and this, just a few people talking, he said, "This is the last thing I shall do before I retire." And look what happened. It has got to be, a decision has got to be reached, and we have to have an M4 relief road in some way. Otherwise, the whole of the south of Wales economy will be very damaged for a long, long time.
Thank you, Bob. Councillor Laura Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with everything that Bob Greenan's just said. He took the words right out of my mouth. And as also did the quote from David Cameron that you put forward, Peter. It perfectly sums up what's happening, and that is that the Labour Welsh Assembly government are holding back our region in a way that is just going to destroy our future economies and the future for our children. It is really stunting growth. We've got the no tolls now. We really need to move forward now and have this M4 relief road. Everyone's not going to agree the best place for where the best place for it is, but it is absolutely essential. I don't know how Debbie Blakeborough, independent at the back there, can possibly say that it's not going to improve things. You say it's a sticking plaster solution. Sticking plaster solution is car sharing. It's a great idea, but it's nothing. It's not going to help the our future generations. The status quo is just not acceptable anymore, and a decision needs to be made ASAP. You said build it and they will come. Well, good. We want them to come. We heavily rely on tourism in South East Wales and Wales, and we need to attract businesses to Wales. So when we have that relief road, if more people come across the border, then this is exactly what we want. I agree with Peter Fox and what he said in the beginning, and I'm encouraged to see that a Labour member, Jim, has the balls, if I'm allowed to say that, to step up and say how disgraceful it is that the Labour government have not made a decision on this, and it keeps delaying it. It is just not acceptable to keep delaying it. I didn't think that the Labour Welsh Assembly government could be any more backward-looking, but it seems to me that they're proving they are by not making this decision imminently. Urgent action needs to be taken, and this can't be put into the long grass anymore. It's the future generations we all need to think about, regardless of what party we are, and we all need to push for this. And I thank you, Peter, for bringing this forward, and we do need to keep the pressure on the First Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor David Dovey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many years have we been? I think I just became a county councillor when this whole debate started. That's about, I think, 15 years, give or take. And we're basically debating the same sort of solution. What we're looking at is building another road through this part of Wales. I submit that you will not get a solution to this problem unless you look at the problem as a whole, as if we were looking at it as one nation. There is alternatives to just trying to stick two chunks of road through Newport, one way or another. But it has to be seen with some imagination. And there, I would like, if this was to go forward, that the petition asks for alternative one nation proposals for the development of this road, because it will not just work trying to put two roads through here like this. It just isn't good work. Bob has spoken about the issues that there are with the infrastructure. That is so. There are constant issues with the wetlands and whatnot to the south of the M4 as it is at the moment. There is always going to be problems there. There's not going to be room enough to expand it when you need to expand it, because that will come. So I almost, well, I would say, I think we need a proposal going forward where we encourage a look at what the solution should be for this area. And I've spoken with a number of people who have got a solution for this area, but it involves involving our neighbours. And I would say that our neighbours are beginning to see the issues with problems that they have and that we have are all the same. And I think it would be a good idea if we started to talk to our neighbours about how we could manage this problem here. But I think it is. I understand what the leader is trying to do, and I applaud it. But I actually think what we are talking about in doing this is bringing nothing new to the table at all, and it needs something new and far more radical than this.
David, Councillor Maureen Powell.
Sorry, Chair, was that an amendment?
No. He didn't put it forward as an amendment, and I'm not taking it as one.
Thank you, Chairman. I support this motion of Peter's, but I can see from other point of view, some of the things that were said from the back here, worrying about the environment and everything else. Don't people realise that while those cars are sticking in those traffic jams, ticking over, because I don't expect they turn their engines off, they're causing a heck of a lot of pollution. Yeah. And if we can only get this road going, it's going to clear a lot of that, because it will get it moving. And people aren't going to come along and going to say, oh, look, there's a new road, we'll all go over to Wales just for the sake of going. They're only going to be going there if they're going to bring a business to this part of the country. And perhaps we may keep some of our people in Wales in Wales. Now, you're going to laugh now, I know, but still. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I do half an hour of physiotherapy exercises. And I look out through my window and I see the phase 465, and from 6 o'clock right through to 7, the traffic is it's like a chain. Their cars are joined together and they're all going off, and they must be going a long way to be going off at 6 o'clock in the morning every day of the week, except the weekends. And if we had industry in Wales, they might stay in Wales and go there instead of taking their expertise and things elsewhere. So I think this road's going to help to clear some of the pollution. It'll help people to get to their jobs quicker. I know it's a good idea to share cars, but it doesn't always work out. You're not always all going to the same place at the same time. And I know lots of people do share cars when they can. And I don't think it'll take ages. The railway is not much of hope, because they're not doing very well. With the railway they've got now, it's going to take a long time to get those trains running. So goodness knows when they could put a railway instead of a road. So I support Peter's motion.
Thank you. Councillor Joe Watkins.
Chairman, can I make a point of order on this, please?
Stand up,
Is
then.
it not a fact that this council already decided to support this M4 relief road? So what is all this unnecessary chatter taking place? The council already decided that, you know, in Councillor Fox, it says it reaffirming the council decision. So why all this natter?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I move that the question be put.
Okay, have you got 9 supporters? Hold on, we can do this. It's quite constitutional. Hold on. Councillor Giles Howard has suggested we take the vote. Is that supported? No, but you can do it any time. What do you want to do, Peter?
Chairman, it's obviously your discretion to know if enough debate was had, but I'm more than happy to thank Giles for bringing forward the motion be put. Happy to accept that.
Councillor, yeah. Well, I think there are. I think Jim's point is well made. Councillor Howard, you need 9 supporters for the vote to be taken now. 9 people put their hands up. Sorry?
I think you need to state that you're satisfied.
Yeah.
Councillor Taylor certainly would not agree with it.
Oh, she wouldn't agree with you?
She is the board.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to make a decision here. Councillor Francis Taylor, you are the most probably affected member of this room, and mind you, you didn't put your hand up at the beginning. You waited well down the list, but even so, I'm going to allow you to speak, and then I'm going to let Giles Howard move again, whether we bring it to an end. But can you make your comments, please, relevant to what Peter has put forward as a motion?
I will, Chair. I will. They'll be very relevant to what Councillor Fox has put. So initially, I was really interested in Councillor Fox's motion, and I thought perhaps the real Conservative position on the black route, maybe it would make itself known. I mean, if you look at your assembly member here in Monmouthshire, he's particularly against the M4 Relief Road. Interestingly, oh, hang on. My heavily pregnant wife couldn't get a train this morning. They were full. And Welsh Government want to blow £1 million on the new M4. Time for people's priorities, Nick Ramsey. The party line, that's what he said. The party line from the Welsh Conservatives is that the Welsh Government are yet to confirm the date, nature or detail of any potential vote, but you can rest assured that the Welsh Conservatives will not support a solution that has an unacceptable cost to the taxpayer or the local environment. So on the matter of the M4 tolls, that is the party line. On the matter of the M4 toll, members, I would be grateful if you would please be quiet. I've been quiet while you've been speaking. On the matter of the M4 tolls, you will recall I shared concerns about those, that they were nothing more than an ill-thought-out political knee-jerk reaction. Cross-party, it has to be said. It has had already and will continue to have significant unintended consequences, in particular in housing terms. It has, however, made it very easy for people to cross over into England and go and work in Bristol. It's also had the effect of people eschewing public transport and getting back into their car. So at some point in the future, I think that will become a very highly regrettable issue. I think that the motion, so Councillor Fox is calling for Welsh Government to spend, well, 1.4 billion, estimates now put that to 1.7 billion, on 14 miles of tarmac. As Councillor Blakeborough says, that's £100 million per mile. That's a very expensive bit of tarmac. Given that the project will exhaust all of Welsh Government's capital borrowing, and that figure is without the cost of the borrowing, let's remember, what's going to happen to things like the Chepstow bypass, members? The issue around Hereford Road? Do you think that they're going to be rushing to complete those projects? There is no money left to complete the A465. It's 12 years overdue, and as Councillor Pratt said, £60 million over budget, and there is no money for the last section. They're looking towards private finance initiatives. So that's a really well-managed issue, isn't it? Which gives me huge confidence that the M4 Relief Road could be delivered. I was really surprised at seeing Peter's motion. I thought there must be a reason behind this motion. And I also thought, I thought Peter had become a convert. He's actually been on a train in the past few years, admittedly connected with City Deal, and going to see how public transport works in overseas. But it is also true to say, members, that this capital infrastructure borrowing could be used to accelerate the metro, which is, after all, around public over private transport. The metro, potentially, and other public transport solutions do bring much greater economic benefits. I mean, I think also Councillor Fox potentially misleads us into thinking that this will bring real benefit for the Welsh economy. The Welsh Government's calculations are that this brings something like £66 million per year. I think that sounds pretty poor for an investment of around £2 billion. And also, let's not forget that despite Councillor Jones's expert knowledge, it has to be said, around traffic jams, the Welsh Government's own experts predict that the time saving to motorists is between 3 and 10 minutes in the AM and PM peak. So for £2 billion, we save, this is not my view, Councillor Jones, okay? If you're querying that, it's the Welsh Government expert view. I'm also really interested that, as you said, there's been a public inquiry at a cost of 20 billion. No, 20 million, that's right. 20 million. And actually, Councillor Fox must know something that we don't, because that was a collection of all the evidence, both for and against. And as I understand it, it would seem that perhaps Welsh Government are reviewing, let's think, a 30-year-old priority, and thinking maybe this does cost too much, maybe this isn't going to be the right thing. The guardian of future well-being of future generations, despite what Councillor Jones says, has vehemently discredited much of the evidence in favour of the M4. And so I'm really interested that Councillor Fox, at this late stage, could bring forward a motion which considers neither the evidence from the future the well-being of future generations, or indeed the potential for environmental damage. None of that contained in this motion, no recognition of it at all. So utterly oblivious of the principles of the Well-being of Future Generations Act. And equally, I think, members, it's really important to mention that not all business support the Black Route. In fact, the Federation of Small Businesses have been very clear that they do not support the Black Route.
Councillor Taylor, we're not talking about a route.
They do not support the new M4. They do not support it. The evidence is irrefutable that road building brings traffic. It does not fix traffic jams. And any public expenditure on good transport links are important to the economy. But the best estimates are a very poor return on investment. The real problem is that we need to achieve modal shift. We need people to get out of their cars. And that cannot be achieved if we can constantly apply 20th century solutions to 21st century problems. For the first time, members, young people are not getting driving licenses in their droves. They are thinking that actually, do I need to own a car? Is this the way I'm going to get around in the future? And I think you need to give some consideration too, because if you are still sitting here in 2037, some of you won't be. Some of you may still be alive in 2037.
Councillor Taylor, you have
finishing.
1 minute.
I'm finishing, Matt. So then I would put a bet on with you that if that road gets built, it will have brought no benefit. The time saving of between 3 and 10 minutes will be irrelevant. And it will not have brought any benefit to the Welsh economy, because for that we need better education, we need a much better approach to giving our young people opportunities to be global citizens. And with that, I certainly won't be supporting your motion, Peter, and I wonder what made you make it. But anyway, that...
Thank you very much. I'm passing over to the Chief Executive now.
Okay, we have a procedural motion on the floor, so we'll just guide ourselves through it. Councillor Howard, you moved a motion that the question now be put. Does that motion have a seconder? I thought it might. We now need to vote on that motion to see whether that carries a majority. So all those in favour of that procedural motion that the question now be put? I think it's clearly carried. Now, Leader, you have the option to sum up, and then the motion itself will be put to the vote.
Okay, well, thank you, members, for that debate. I quite enjoyed that, and so I do take it, Francis, that as you said, you're not going to support us, which I was quite surprised about. I think we've got to just look at the bigger picture. You're talking about car sharing and about people moving. You're not seeing the big global picture. Do we want Wales to be a globally recognised place where inward investment should flow, and barriers are removed from companies who want to invest there, so we can exploit the opportunities which are growing in our midst? You know, you wouldn't go along to a shopping centre if you knew you had to wait an hour to get there every day. You'd go somewhere else, wouldn't you? You know, it's the same from a global perspective looking in on Wales. If we don't address these things, we see the UK government unlocking bridge tolls, a massive barrier to opportunity in Wales. We see others, like-minded individuals across the political parties wanting to unlock opportunities because we want to think about future generations. We want to give them life opportunities. We want to deliver on their aspirations, give all of the things that we've all benefited from. We want to unlock the opportunities here in Wales. You know, and there are massive concerns. I know there will always be concerns about things like wildlife. You know, and I'm sympathetic. I love wildlife. I'm a farmer, for God's sake. I see wildlife all of the time. But what I also know about wildlife, it's extremely adaptable. It adapts and it finds new homes and it will move with the times. I don't know how worlds and communities and countries ever evolved. You know, if certainly wouldn't evolve if we'd have taken the sorts of approaches we seem to put in the way of any progress in this country at the moment. And I think just Wales government just to have to show leadership. And I recognise people are saying, well, it's not your position. I'm a leader of Monmouthshire. I'm part of the capital region. I'm seeing a bigger picture and I'm talking to businesses regularly. If you were at the CBI conference listening to businesses there, you would know what they really desperately need. You know, this is an important piece in the jigsaw puzzle of unlocking the future potential of Wales. And if we turn our back on this opportunity now, or rather Wales government turns it back, we will lose that opportunity. Those future investments won't flow to the degree they would have done. Those big businesses won't see this a place that is open for business. So it's not that little thing about car sharing and that. You're not going to share lorries. You're not going to drive a lorry onto a metro in the near future. And that's why I said that's decades away. You've got to get real and recognise we're in a place here and now and we need to deliver something to make all of these things happen and create the opportunities we want. I'm not saying that in the future, in many years to come, when diesel and petrol is no longer allowed, that we haven't got new multimodal shift, as you call it, or new types of ways of getting around. You know, that will happen. But, you know, at the moment we have a problem here and now and we need to deliver it. So, Mr. Chairman, I hope the Council can reaffirm its support for the proposed M4 Relief Road for all of the reasons I shared. And I do recognise that people have other real pressing issues around infrastructure that they wanted to be discussed. And there is a time and place for that, and quite rightly so. And we need to debate infrastructural issues around Chepstow and things like that. But today the focus is on this massive enabling decision which could be made, and it's in the gift of the Wales Government to make. They have the money, they have the tools to borrow. All they need is the testicular strength, as was talked about earlier, to make that decision. I hope they will do, Mr. Chairman.
Right, we've had the wind-up. We now have the opportunity to vote on the motion. Can somebody, with those in favour of the motion, please show? Well, I think that's nearly everybody. What's wrong with that? Right. Do those against wish to show as well? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, thank you very much. The motion is... Right, we move on now to members' questions. Councillor Petruni to Councillor Murphy.
As on the order paper, Chairman.
Councillor Murphy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dimitri. Corporately, there were 11 cases in 2018. Schools-based, there were 3. The average suspensions time corporately was 4.7 months, 3 months in respect of schools, so an average of 4.3.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just a technical question. Is 4 months, did you say 4 to 5 months? Did I hear you correctly?
Is
that consistent with neighbouring local authorities?
To be honest, I don't know. I doubt that Peter would know that off the top of my head, but it's certainly a good question, and I'll get you the answer.
A lot better than Caerphilly.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it is a lot better than good.
Councillor Brian Strong, your next question to Councillor John, please.
As on the order, Peter, paper, Chairman.
Councillor John.
Thank you. Well, members might recall in our 2017-2022 corporate plan, we had a commitment to undertake a review of catchment areas and admissions policies. A number of the secondary school catchment areas have been more or less unchanged since Monmouthshire came into existence in 1996. There are a number of anomalies where catchment areas between primary and secondary schools do not align, and instances like Usk where we are inadvertently forcing children to study out of county. Now, we believe as an administration that if you live in Monmouthshire, you pay your council tax in Monmouthshire, you elect county councillors in Monmouthshire to make decisions about school funding, then you should have a right for your children to be educated in Monmouthshire. In the past 18 months, I've had a number of parents write to me, particularly from the Usk area, about their disappointment at not being able to access a secondary school place in Monmouthshire, despite the fact that Monmouth Comprehensive School is their closest Monmouthshire secondary school. So we are proposing to extend the catchment area of Monmouth Comprehensive School to take in the whole Usk primary school catchment area. Our consultation begins tomorrow and runs until the 1st of March. And I urge all parents in the Usk area and other affected areas in Monmouthshire, namely Goitravauer, Trellick and Llandogo, to have their say on our proposals. So I would urge members of this chamber as well to write in or email with their views, complete our online consultation response form, or come along to one of our public meetings. Our public meeting at Usk Primary School is on the 20th of February at 6 p.m, but there are also other evening meetings in Goitra, Trellick and Llandogo, as well as a daytime session here in County Hall on the 14th of February. All these dates are contained within the consultation document, which will be published on the Monmouthshire County Council website tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Strong?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for that information. I also have had a lot of correspondence from parents worried about not being able to get a place at Monmouth. One thing, the children who currently go to Killeen from Usk and the other areas, would they still have free transport to Killeen until all the current children take their place in Monmouth?
So our school transport policy is that children get free transport if they live more than 2 miles from their nearest or catchment school. So under these proposals, for children who live in the Usk catchment area, Monmouth Comprehensive School will become their catchment secondary school. So at the moment, those who are lucky enough to secure a school place in Monmouth Comprehensive School, they don't get their transport paid. Under these proposals, we would be able to make that commitment. To students who already attend Killeen Comprehensive School, we will honour existing transport arrangements for the duration that they are at that school. So I can make that commitment.
Thank you very much. We go on now to item 7 as a diary of meetings.
Thank you, Chair. In the absence of the leader, we have the draft diary of meetings in front of us. This has been in front of the Democratic Services Committee, and you will note that on the report they have asked that once we agree the timetable of meetings, that these be kept to, because it is very difficult for members when meetings are suddenly proposed at short notice. And in fact, I would actually like to ask if it is possible that once the diary is agreed for meetings of council, that electronic invitations be put out to all members, so that we will be kept appraised of when those meetings are, and that Democratic Services remove them if they then become cancelled, so that we will all be kept up to date with what they are. But you will see the draft meetings down there, and I leave it up to members to make any comments.
Councillor Giles Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I did share with Councillor Reverend Lane that my New Year's resolution was to be less cranky and a bit more patient. But I'm not doing very well so far. But I do have an issue with this, and I'm not going to propose any amendments because we'll be here for another hour talking about it and we won't really get an effective solution. But just to say that it was 20 years ago I served my first term on this council, and when I look at the meetings in that diary, apart from the fact that some of them have different titles, there's absolutely no difference between the timings of the meeting, yet we give all this talk about how we want to open up local democracy to people from all walks of life, and what does this do to achieve that? Absolutely nothing. So I'm really disappointed that yet another year is upon us and nothing has been done to address it.
Councillor Petroni.
Just actually not make any more comment than to totally support Councillor Howard's position on this.
Councillor John. Yes, sorry.
Thank you. I welcome the fact that we've, as a council, we've made strides towards being more representative. I know there are a number of local authorities in South Wales almost exclusively made up of retirees. And I do feel that we have a responsibility to people who may be interested in standing at the next election, who may want to become councillors. But I do feel that having formal meetings during school holidays can represent a barrier to attendance. Certainly there are a number of us here who have childcare responsibilities. And while I welcome the fact that we've got the school holiday dates on the calendar, which is really welcome, I do note that the week beginning the 22nd of July, which is in the school holidays, we've got select committee meetings, area committee meetings, and a meeting of full council. While I appreciate we've got months to plan ahead for that, it would certainly be easier for people who have childcare responsibilities if we didn't have formal meetings during school holidays.
Councillor Howarth, please.
Sorry, Chairman. We have a full council meeting during July, first week after the school holidays start, and as families, and many have got children and grandparents here, like to get away within that period. And most people who do work, if you haven't got children, you actually let other people you work with take their children away, so it is flexible. So what I was going to suggest is we have a meeting on the 20th of June, a full council meeting, and then we either bring that council meeting forward before the school holidays to the Thursday, let's say. I haven't got the diary in front of me, and if there's any business on there, we have that meeting just to run before the holidays start, that full council meeting. If there's not, we don't have it, and that will be up to the chairman. But while we're going to set the diary today, I think that will be a better solution. The other meetings, yes, you're quite right. I think we should actually move them and make sure that everybody has that opportunity to spend that 6 or 7 weeks have family time. I'll be in agreement with that if somebody wants to sort that out today. Now, I would second that proposal from you, Councillor John. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Francis Taylor. Just a minute.
I'm interested in what we're more representative of, actually, Councillor John. That's quite an interesting comment, given there's not a single woman in the Labour group, as an example. Anyway, I think that it's just disappointing. I can't, frankly, be bothered to talk about the diary anymore, because year in, year out, we debate it. Year in, year out, we say, oh, we're going to make it easier for people who work and this, that and the other. And year in, year out, nothing changes. It's just tiresome. It's almost like, it's not quite as bad, but it's nearly as bad about the debate about what time council planning site visits should start. And the reason, hence, why I do not ever go to CAT planning anymore. It's just. I think if council should acknowledge it for what it is. We just pander to the many and never take account of the needs of the few. Thank you.
No one else? Okay. Shall I take a vote on it? Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I propose that, so far as the July calendar is concerned, that we transpose the audit meeting of the 18th for the council meeting of the 25th, so that the audit meeting is now the 25th and the full council meeting is on the 18th.
Is everybody happy about that? We bring in the last council meeting 1 week earlier.
18th.
18th.
Yeah, move.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's within the school term time. Okay, that's gone through. Can I now have a general vote for the acceptance of next year's diary, please? All those in favour? Yes, there we go. That's carried.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A quick report. As you'll see, Councillor Kevin Williams has resigned from the Community Health Council, and it's incumbent on us to put a member in place to fill that spot. It's a very important outside body. You'll see the diary and the code of conduct attached to that committee, and today, Chairman, we're looking for nominations, and while I'm on my feet, I'm happy to nominate Councillor Jane Pratt to that role.
Do you set your nomination, Councillor Pratt?
Second.
Second. Oh, right. It looks like we've got it. All those in favour of Councillor Pratt? I wish all our motions went through as quickly as that. Right, we go on now to item 8, the reduction of council tax. Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And the purpose of this report is to present the arrangements for the implementation of the council tax reduction scheme and to approve it for 2019-20, and in affirming that we see to the, in an absence of any revisions or amendments, annual rating amendments will be carried out each year without a requirement to adopt the whole council tax reduction scheme. So the recommendations include that adoption of the provisions within the regulations from the 1st of April 2019. Members will no doubt recall that on the 18th of January 18, the Council adopted the council tax reduction scheme for 18-19. In fact, we do that every year. In accordance with the prescribed requirements of the regulations. Failure to adopt the scheme by the 31st of January will result in a default scheme being imposed on the Council, and that's not as good as the one we've got, where claimants can receive a reduction of up to 100% of their council tax bill, depending upon their income and household circumstances. And this is reaffirming the policy that we've had for a number of years, which is of benefit to our residents.
Councillor Vitroni.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Just for my purposes, when the Westminster government cut this particular budget by 10% and transferred it to the Welsh Government, how much did the Welsh Labour Government give to Monmouthshire to subsidise that? To compensate for that, should I say?
Off the top of my head, I can't recall, and Peter, I think, is frantically trying to find it, but they actually replaced what the cut was. So we weren't cut, if you see what I mean.
You weren't cut because of the Welsh Labour Government?
No.
Should anybody else wish to comment on this particular item? Right, with all those in favour of it, please show. Thank you very much. Right, we now go on to item 8.2, the proposed acquisition of the former MOD railway line at Crick to Cowent. Councillor Murphy.
Chairman, it's me again. This has been in the pipeline for a long, long time, and Caldicot members will be well aware that there's been a great desire over a long period to create a walkway and a cycleway through there, and it will come under the Sustrans proposals and their criteria. This report is to seek the approval to acquire the former MOD railway line between Crick and Cowent to facilitate the cycle and walkway, but in particular to enable the easement of the service to the Crick Road LDP development site. The acquisition costs will be met from the sale proceeds of the Crick Road site, and they will depend on what happens with regards to surface water attenuation with regards to that site. It's necessary to acquire this site so that we can deal with that, as it looks to be becoming a bit of a problem with regard to that development. And the Countryside Service will take this on as a potential route and commission Sestran to undertake the studies and identify its suitability and the potential liabilities that would result. I know we particularly looked at all the bridges and they're quite sound, so that wouldn't be a problem. So the line extends from the Pill Farm Industrial Estate in Caldicot to the point where it joins the A48 at Crick, but does not go across the A48, so we're not taking on that bridge, which is a big problem, and I know the MOD are looking to take it down. So in the process of disposing of Crick Road for that residential development with Melin, it will give us the opportunity not only of creating that walk and cycleway, but also deal with the surface water drainage relating to that site.
Thank you very much, Phil. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As a local member, I absolutely welcome this. Is from a couple of ways. Obviously, there's a requirement for it now to help with water removal, and I acknowledge that. But also, for several years, there's lots of us been trying to work out a way how we can actually bring this old railway line into some useful, function, and actually into a walk route, cycle route, which also enables and benefits the new site at Crick Road, has to be welcomed. We all had concerns about bridges. I'm confident that the bridges that would transfer to us are of a condition that I needn't or we needn't worry about. So this is something that has been on the cards for some time. We're pleased that progress has been made, and I do want to pay tribute to the work that's gone on with officers who've met with relative partners over many years to try and find a way forward on this. And I just ask members to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say that I am absolutely delighted to see this project come forward. When we first started talking about this, I had brown hair and I weighed about two stone less than I do now. So I'm absolutely delighted. I mean, we talk about health and well-being. This will promote that, and not only that, it will be a safe route for cyclists and for walkers. And hopefully, if we are a little bit keen and this starts to build up, which I'm sure it will, it'll be a tourist attraction as well. Then maybe Caldicot Castle can benefit financially from it if they use their heads a little bit. And I'm absolutely delighted that at long last, I thought I might not live to see it, but I will. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Almond-Watts.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I know that area quite well as kids when we used to play down at the castle, because I'm originally a Caldicot lad. At night time, you used to be able to see the MOD taking the nuclear weapons out of there. They always used to do it at night time, obviously for the cover of night. But so you used to go down and watch it. It was quite something. I have to say that. And also, if you have dogs or whatever, you used to be able to walk down there. It was a specific site where you get a lot of buzzards down there. And my question is really, Peter will probably know this, but have we actually done an environmental impact to the wildlife down there? What does that mean for the wildlife, the existing wildlife, once we do it? And the other question I've got is, and I'm sorry, this might upset Alan, is that, so whilst I know that we're going to get this for £1, the additional cost is £100,000. And I'm, in my mind, you see, I know where you're coming from on this, but in my mind, in light of the brutality of the cuts, and, we've just talked quite at length about really, charging for school breakfast. I wonder what our priorities are here, okay? I'm not saying that I'm against it, I'm simply just posing that kind of question. Whether or not members feel comfortable about doing it at a time of deep austerity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fox.
Yeah. A couple of things. I think a good point about the environmental study. I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest. But obviously, whenever we acquire something like this, we want to be sympathetic to the natural surroundings there. So I would hope all due diligence would be taken, in that regard. I hear what you're saying about the finance. I mean, actually, there's as you see in the report, You know, if an easement isn't necessary across there, it will only cost us £1. It's only if we need the easement across it that it costs 100,000, which is capital monies, not revenue monies, which would be funded out of the receipt of the Crick Road development. So it's not something which affects in the same way as some of the revenue budgets we were discussing earlier. It's actually an enabling piece, because actually if you didn't spend that 100,000, you wouldn't be able to realise and capitalise on the site and build houses that we desperately need on Crick Road. So it's just one of those things. Let's hope that they can find a solution for the easement without having to cross it. Then it would only cost us £1. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it would be an absolute shame to lose the opportunity to capitalise on this, you know, on this thing.
Councillor Joe Watkins.
Thank you. I definitely support the acquisition of this piece of land, and I just would like to mention that I've been contacted by quite a number of residents in Caldicot and Caerwent who really want safe routes between those two places. At the moment, there's no safe way for cyclists or pedestrians to get through, so I really hope that this scheme can go ahead and we can provide some safe ways to travel.
Thank you very much. Councillor David Dovey.
Thank you, Chairman. I merely want to say that the portfolio for affordable transport is handled at the moment by the MTSG, Christian Smith, and I mentioned it this morning, so it's just to put it on record again. It would be worthwhile checking what Christian is actually, what stage he is, because I know he's been talking about areas that have been mentioned by my colleague at the back. We should make sure that we're not duplicating the effort here.
Thank you. Right, all those in favour of this proposed acquisition? I think that's everybody. Well done. We have an extra supplementary item. They're both in as number 9 as a minute, so I'll take the supplementary first. That's a transfer of land at the former Ironworks at Cliddock Gorge from Costain to the County Council. Councillor Phil Murphy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And this report's seeking for the Council's consent for the transfer of ownership from Costain to the Council with the land known as the former Cemex cement plant at Cliddock Gorge. The former site at that gorge needs to be transferred by Costain to MCC, and it will be done for the sum of £1. Following that transfer, the site will be incorporated into the portfolio of land and property managed and operated by our countryside service. Access to the land already in the council's ownership is currently restricted to a listed footbridge crossing the river Cliddock. So the Cemex site sits between the ironworks and the there's a message just come through and just obscured what I was reading, so right, it's gone now. And the visitor car park and the picnic site on Station Road. These have been impacted by the A465 Heads of the Valley during scheme, and the former caravan site and part of the picnic site are lost to the new construction works. However, the remaining part of the picnic site and the car park will be returned to the council once the works are completed. So the benefits of the transfer are to provide operational access to the land already in the council's ownership and allow the implementation of a comprehensive improvement scheme to provide an important gateway for visitors and local residents to access the eastern end of the gorge. So this is just a transfer at £1 to enable all that to happen.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Pratt, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As one of the local members, I ask that the Council support the purchase of this piece of land from Costain, as it will provide access to the historically important ironworks site, as illustrated in the map in the papers. It also makes the point that the site sits in a prominent position next to the Cliddock South Saleyard junction off the A465 Heads of the Valley Road. This site has been badly neglected by various council administrations, and this northern part of the county has passed between Brecon and Radnor, Blaenau Gwent and Monmouthshire over the years. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is one of the most significant industrial sites in Wales, if not the world, where up to 3,000 of our ancestors toiled and died young at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It must be given the priority it deserves jointly by MCC, Welsh Government, Cadw and Brecon Beacons National Parks Authority to develop this site into a sustainable facility that enhances the educational and leisure offer for local school children and visitors to this beautiful area. I hope that part of the legacy from Welsh Government to help compensate for the years of misery caused to local residents and businesses by the roadworks will be a commitment to back this purchase by us with funding to develop this important site as part of the Blaenavon Heritage Trail and a true lasting legacy. I urge you to support this purchase, and when you are passing, take time to visit the ironworks and pass over the magnificent iron bridge over the River Clydach in the footsteps of our ancestors, because it is a sight to behold. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howarth, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and every word Councillor Pratt has spoken there, I agree with. I just got a few questions to ask there, because there is some hesitant with myself with the funding long term on this project, which we all know. It's okay for us to take a site on for £1. First of all, the caravan site which was there was in our ownership. I haven't had an answer to a question I keep asking. We had the caravan site CPO'd, compulsory purchase, to carry out this scheme. Have we been paid for the CPO, which I don't think we have, because I don't think anybody's been paid at the moment on the valuation of what that site was. There was talk then that we were to replace the site with another site through the compensation. I don't believe that has happened also. Now, somebody suggested that is what the agreement was. I've seen nothing in writing to that agreement, whether that funding will be made available to replace the caravan site. If not, will that CPO monies go back into the capital pot, or will it be put forward to enhance this scheme? The scheme at the Ironworks will be a very complicated scheme, because it's an area which will be contaminated with works from a batching concrete plant. There is a pylon, which in my view and many others' view is a very restricted item which will cause complications. Is the site still classed as a brownfield site? Or has it lost that right to be a brownfield site since Costain's purchased? I don't think it will have, because Costain's would have purchased the site for one specific reason, to use it. They haven't used it for whatever reason. So for me, I'd like to know, have we been paid for the caravan site? And don't forget, that site was a lease site from this council to a tenant, and the site was running really well. The caravan picnic area, which are being utilised by Costain's at the moment, the two areas, the car park and the picnic area, we will seek compensation for usage. Are we having compensation now, or is this part of the compensation package? Or are they just doing us a favour by saying, look, take that site off his hands? I just find it very strange that a brownfield site can be given to us for £1, or is it going to mean we're going to lose all the other things and all the other claims we have on the Welsh Government for compensation? Because if it does, can we afford this site? That's my only complication I have. Can we afford this site long term to enhance it and do what we want with it? The money's there if we haven't been paid compensation for the caravan site. If it's not there, I'd like to find out what our business case is for long term for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Matthew, can you give us answers on this?
Yes, certainly, Chair. In terms of the acquisition, in terms of the CPO, my understanding is that a figure has been agreed. but that we haven't actually had that money
Sorry,
yet.
Matthew,
Sorry.
could you just explain to all our councillors who you are and what
Yeah,
you
sorry,
do?
my apologies. Yes, I'm Matthew Lewis, a Green Infrastructure and Countryside Manager. Sorry, so in terms of the compensation payment, the payment for in relation to the land that was compulsory purchased, that is the former caravan site and a very small portion of the former picnic site. A sum for that has been agreed, but that has not yet been paid. But that would normally be dealt with, or would be dealt with as a capital receipt in the normal way, so go into the central pot. The remainder of the picnic site and the car park has been occupied by Welsh Government and through Costain for the road construction will be returned to us. I understand there will be a small compensation, if you like, payment for that, but that figure's not yet agreed. And in fact is lumped in with a wider compensation payment amongst other council assets for the road. So we're not relied on that in terms of putting this particular proposal together. The agreement is that that land will be returned in the same condition as it was when it was taken over, but obviously that wasn't a particularly good condition because the site hadn't had any substantial work done since the 1980s. Hence the bringing forward of a improvement scheme. The Costain site owned by Costain, it's important to make it clear that the Cemex site is owned by Costain and not Welsh Government. It was bought by Costain on the open market because they thought that they needed it in order to facilitate the road construction, but in the end they have never used it. So that is a sort of genuine offer from Costain in terms of the transfer because they did pay a market rate for that site. In terms of brownfield, is it a brownfield site? It's a site that's in the same sort of designation, I guess, in terms of the remaining sites that we own in that area. The advantage in terms of acquiring the site is that, as has been said, the main ironworks structure, which if you don't know it, is a very substantial structure. It's sort of 3-4 stories high, very large structure. One of the constraints in terms of management and in fact in bringing forward a longer term, bringing forward a restoration scheme, is that we have no right of vehicular access to the site. There's Smarts Bridge, which is a grade 1 listed cast iron bridge across the Cliddock, but you can't put anything across that. And we're just a very steep incline that some of you may know from the side of the village hall otherwise. So that significantly constrains a restoration scheme. So the advantage of taking over the Cemex site is not only would it provide visitors with a direct access from the car park crossing the road straight into the site. It also allows a certain amount of land forming to be done, which to an extent, and I got granted only to an extent, can reduce the impact of the pylons, but fundamentally we can't do anything about the pylons. They're of that size that, you know, underground in those would be millions and millions of pounds. But also then provides us with, as I say, the ability in the longer term to come forward with a restoration scheme for the ironworks and gain direct access. But I've got to stress that I think that is very much in the longer term, and we'd need to look for partnership, external grant, etc., etc. And so it's a stepping stone, if you like. The grant we've currently got from Visit Wales is sufficient to lay out both the existing site and the site that we would acquire, so that it is an improved sort of environmental asset and for visitors and for local residents. Sorry, I'm not sure if that answers all of the questions, but...
Simon, do you want to come back? Are you all right?
Yeah, I think that's super. The only question I do have is, we've just discussed an item there about a footpath and a road and whatever in Cowent there, and the monies from the sale of the site at Crick Road will go to altering and modifying, if we need to, the site which we discussed from the Crick Road development. Why is it then the caravan? And this is what the residents and everybody in my community says, is the sale of the caravan park. If it's not going to be replaced, that money should be invested into this site. And we've done it with one, we should do it with the other. That will give us the starting chance. I am really apprehensive about taking this project forward, because we're not talking about small small cash here. It's a mammoth project. This would be probably a 2-decade project to do what we want to do here. Without the finances to even get it off the ground, it's going to be really difficult. So I do believe, yes, capital money goes back in, but that capital money actually from the sale of that caravan site on the CPO, which we've had, by right should be invested back into this community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Feakins.
Thank you, Chair. And just to ask, are we confident that there are no nasties on site? And will we get any indemnity from Cemex, or from Costain, rather?
We can't be absolutely confident, obviously, but we have taken a very precautionary approach. There's a concrete slab over most of the site. We do not intend to disturb the concrete slab, partly for that reason and partly because we don't want to get into the cost and expense of exposing the archaeological remains underneath, because it's all within the scheduled ancient monument. I understand that Estates colleagues have spoken to the council's insurance officer, and he's satisfied that the additional risk is minimal in terms of the risk that we already hold. It's worth pointing out that that contaminated land designation actually extends across large parts of Clydach village, including areas of existing housing, the playing field, the village hall, etc., etc. And we know that the land adjacent to it has been, we've managed that, or Blaenau Gwent before us and Monmouthshire have managed that land since the 1980s, and there's been no known problems. We did do some ground investigations very close to the boundary in 2009 when we were looking at works on the scheduled ancient monuments itself, and although they were primarily structural, did include some chemical analysis, and nothing came out of that. So we're taking quite a precautionary approach.
Okay, that's answered everybody's questions. The recommendation is that we, on page 1, is that we do agree to this for the sum of £1. Are you all in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. So we now go on to confirm the minutes of the meeting held here on 20th of December, which is on page 49 if you're on hard copy.
Move.
All happy? Right. Okay. And whoops. And the last item on the agenda this afternoon is the action list. We do have one item in front of us. I don't know if somebody wants to discuss that. Councillor John, sorry.
Just to say, last time we heard very powerfully from Ros Jones-Griffiths about the impact that Newport's decision to withdraw from CENCOM was already having on the service that she was experiencing for her 4-month-old daughter who is hearing impaired. Following that meeting, I've had a conversation with my opposite number in Newport. I followed that up with a letter to the leader of Newport City Council, formally requesting the 2 impact assessments that members expressed their desire to see, the Wellbeing of Future Generations assessment and the quality impact assessments that were undertaken at the time of Newport's decision to withdraw. You will see on the action list my letter to the leader of Newport, as well as the leader's reply to me, which I note does not contain either assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Howard.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And as again, from last meeting, I brought a petition to this council on the 10th of May 2018, reference to a serious matter in Clydach, revolving around the Edge of Valley scheme, and it's all to do with Danny Coyd. And if anybody would care to visit there, here's the pictures of what we have there. I was asked for evidence, which has been given.
Well,
Kelly
Simon,
Byrne.
you're on another subject altogether.
No, I'm on the action here.
No, but we're on the
Right.
correspondence
I thought
we've been having with Newport. Can we just finish with that first, then we come to it? Councillor Fox.
Yes, yeah, and thank you, Richard, and thank you for writing on behalf of the council. And I think we all agreed the decision, and I welcome that Newport have responded very quickly, and I have great respect for Debbie Wilcox, the leader of Newport, and we work very, very closely together. But I do have some concerns with the last paragraph, the closing paragraph there, challenging why we should challenge the sovereign decision of another. Well, the reality is when it's a shared service, if you do something which undermines the shared service and affects your own sovereignty and the people you are representing, it does become an issue for other councils. And, you know, I'll share that with Debbie directly. So I'm disappointed perhaps all the information hasn't been forthcoming. Perhaps it will be made available when it's been completed, or it's for distribution.
Just quickly, members, just to introduce a point of information for you. Messrs Watkins and Gunn solicitors have served notice on Newport today that they intend to judicially review the decision that they're representing a particular client.
Thank you. I think we'd better wind it at that point, then, hadn't we? Do you want to finish off there, Richard?
Just to add that officers are continuing to have discussions with our neighbouring authorities. In fact, I've had a missed call from the Cabinet Member for Education in Torvine while we've been in here, and I'm meeting all the Cabinet Members for Education in the Gwent area on Wednesday, and this is something we will be discussing further.
So Chair, if I may, that would seem a sensible point to just end the conversation. We certainly won't want to be introducing anything that could jeopardise legal proceedings that may now take place between two parties, but we are a related party. Okay, so any additional questions, commentary that you might be interested in, I'd be happy to deal with outside the chamber.
Councillor Matt, can't even see Arvin. Is that on this subject you wish to talk about?
Well, I'm not looking to last.
Okay, so you'll see. Keep quiet.
I appreciate you did actually get my name right this time, so thank you. Many years we've on you. Is that what it is? Is it really? Chair, if I may, just to be helpful really, to get, and I don't want to talk about Newport for very obvious reasons. See the legal officer nodding, hoping that I won't even attempt to stray into that. But in an attempt to be helpful, to get to the bottom of the impact that it might have on Monmouthshire, which is something I'm sure we're all interested in. I've invited, or in fact Martin is about to, I should say, who's the chairman of Children and Young People, the specific officer, Mr. Thurlbeck, along to his committee meeting. So we'll get an opportunity to ask him questions. Hopefully, I'll certainly be going along with interest to fire some questions in about the immediate impact. Thank you, Chair.
Well done. Leave it there. Right, that concludes that matter. Now, Councillor Howarth, please.
Yeah, I do apologise, Chairman. It was 20 to 5 and I thought, oh, we're on a roll here. Reference to 10th of May action and Danny Coyd. We seem to be stalling and not going nowhere with this. I think we've had everybody there bar Theresa May and we still haven't gone anywhere with it. It's an issue that has to be resolved and it will not go away. The tenants there will not go away. And I think when anybody's been out there, they're actually amazed at what has been put there. They can't believe it. The photographs are here. I can either email them to everybody, actually, what we've got here. Evidence-based, I have the public inquiry drawings. I have everything, and I've given it to the authorities. But nobody's done anything, and nobody's interested at all. We as an authority, no disrespect, I don't know what the heck we're doing because we're going around in circles. I refuse to have another meeting here over it. There's enough there to actually go at the Welsh Government and go at Costains and ask them what the heck's gone on. I even spoke to the planning inspectorate in Bristol who were going to consult with the Welsh Government. That was last February. That's nearly a year ago. Nothing. Not a damn sausage back from them. That's a disgrace. These are people's lives have been ruined, Chairman, and we as an authority, I've got to say, we're not as good. We've done nothing. I've had meeting after meeting after meeting, and everybody keeps going round in a circle. Are we frightened? There's nothing to be frightened about here. I don't know why we're frightened. Are we having some kind of compensation package with the Welsh Government? We're not. Why are we not sorting this out? Members, we need to sort it out, because I'm going to keep coming back here until it is sorted out. Thank you.
Simon, I've just had an assurance from our Chief Executive. Your point is noted and we will get it dealt with, all right?
What I actually said is that we will continue to see what we can do. It's a complicated set of affairs, and we shouldn't kid ourselves that we can action something that's not within our gift. So we shall see what we can do.
Jane, do you wish to add to that or leave it alone?
No, I'm happy to leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. 4:45, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance.